Let's talk about the hardest part of intermittent fasting. It's actually probably not what you think it is. Most people think the hardest part of intermittent fasting will be the fasting, but I've found that it's actually the easiest part. The hardest part is actually withstanding the social pressure to eat. It's something that I never really experienced before I started doing intermittent fasting, because pretty much if anybody else was eating, I was going to eat too. But people feel really guilty if you don't eat while they're eating. I mean, try it sometime. Like, just go to a dinner and don't eat. People will go crazy, or maybe they won't, but just experiment with it. See how people react if you don't eat while they're eating. Now, what I've found is it's very, very easy to just not eat the food. Like, as far as if I'm sitting down at a table and people are eating, it is super easy for me to just not eat the food. Like, I don't get like ravenously hungry and I've just got to eat all of it. It's just like, I don't care about eating right then because I'm not hungry, because my body's just used to, eating at a certain time each day. But it is hard to resist the urge to eat so that other people feel better. So you have to learn how to deal with this pressure, and I'm going to just share with you what I've found works for me. I work from home, and I homeschool my kids, and my husband works from home too. We're both realtors. So there are people eating around me all the time, and like I said before, it really doesn't bug me. Like, I don't sit here and think, oh God, I wish I just had that. I don't feel that way. But my husband feels super guilty still if he's eating and I'm not. So one thing that I've found is I just don't sit down with him for breakfast and lunch. I used to want to try to do that, like, oh, I'll just sit here and you can eat, and he hates it. He hates eating in front of me. I mean, sometimes I like to try to make him feel worse, like I'll just, oh, that looks so good, but I'm just joking. So just taking yourself out of the equation is a really great way to just deal with that. But let's say you have something that you can't take yourself out of that situation, like if it's a business lunch, for example. You may think, well, what am I supposed to do? What I have found, and what works best for me, is to just intentionally go off plan. Now, what do I mean by that? Sure, I could sit there and I could just say, well, I'm not going to eat right now. And then everybody in the room is probably going to feel bad that I'm not eating, and they are. And while I could withstand that pressure, it's just not something that I enjoy doing. I would just rather people enjoy themselves. Like, I don't want to take everybody's enjoyment out of it. But I do it intentionally. So when I have, one of those events coming up, I just tell myself, okay, well, I have that lunch tomorrow, so that means I'm going to eat lunch and then supper instead of just eating the supper. And that keeps me on plan better. It helps me to just say, okay, this was a planned thing. Instead of just like, well, whenever the situation arises, no, I try to say, okay, this is going to happen, so therefore I'm going to eat lunch, and then I'll just have supper tomorrow night too. One thing I don't do is I don't just try to make that the one meal of the day. Like, for example, I only do one meal a day, which is basically a 24-hour fast. So the reason I don't do like, well, then I'll just make lunch, my business lunch, that one meal of the day, and then I'll just go back to eating supper the next day. Well, then that's going to add maybe like 6 or so hours to the fast. And I just feel like I stick to the plan better if I just say, nope, I'm just going to keep, the one constant in my life every day is I'm eating supper. And so if I can just say, okay, I'm eating supper, I'm not having to try to deal with like, well, wait, yesterday I had lunch, so maybe I should have like an early supper, maybe I should do a snack. Nope, it's just boom, I know that I can easily do the 24-hour fast every day. So that's what I do. So when I was deciding that I was only going to do one meal a day, I intentionally chose supper. And the reason I chose supper as opposed to breakfast or lunch is there's definitely a lot more social pressure to eat supper. Breakfast, people kind of like, I don't really like breakfast, and people kind of get that. The idea of lunch is a little bit, people are a little bit more like, you should eat some lunch. But then supper, people are like, you have to eat supper. So when I decided to do one meal a day, I chose supper because really it was the path of least resistance. So I hope this video helped you understand the most challenging aspect of intermittent fasting and gave you some, some techniques if this is something you're trying out. Really it comes down to being intentional. Always just be intentional. Whatever plan you choose, whatever you do with your, weight, exercise, it's just all about becoming intentional. That's the big takeaway. So I hope that helps. If you have experienced this same phenomenon of people feeling really guilty, leave it in the comments below. Tell me, what do you do? Do you take yourself out of the situation or just sit there and let people feel bad? How do you handle it?